Here's one of the biggest oddities in all of professional sports. You ready? The great state of New York has three different professional football teams. There's the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets, and the New York Giants. One state, three football teams. Now, there are 22 states that don't even have one NFL team. I come from an hour south of L.A., which is not in itself a state, but it also does not have a football team, quite to our annoyance. But the state of New York, the great state of New York, is blessed with three of them. The odd part, though, is that of the three New York NFL teams, only one of them actually plays in New York. The Buffalo Bills play all of their home games in a place called Orchard Park, New York. It's right outside of Buffalo. The Jets and the Giants, they both play not in New York, but rather in New Jersey. That's right. The New York Jets and the New York Giants are both based out of New Jersey. They, in fact, share a stadium in New Jersey called the MetLife Stadium. When the Jets are playing there, the stadium is lit up in green, very fancy. When the Giants are playing there, the stadium is lit up in blue. I think I actually like the blue. And if you happen to be driving by MetLife Stadium in New Jersey yesterday morning, your face is probably a nice bright shade of red. You see how we did that? Because this is what it looked like. Bumper-to-bumper traffic, gridlock. Nobody moving much more than a few feet for hours. Now, was there some big sporting event at MetLife Stadium or some big concert that was causing all of that traffic? No, there was not. It was Monday morning. There was instead a giant water main break. A 12-inch water main buried beneath the ground near MetLife Stadium erupted yesterday morning around 3 a.m., turning one of the busiest roads heading into New York City to what looked more like a parking lot. Traffic is backed up for miles, all because of the water main break. And it wasn't just New Jersey, actually. Let's say you were due in court this morning at around 9 a.m. at the John R. Hargrove Senior District Courthouse in Baltimore, Maryland. The thing you would have found when you showed up for court this morning was that the entire courthouse was shut down. The Baltimore courthouse was shut down today after, you guessed it, a giant water main broke right nearby. In St. Louis, Missouri, this morning, police crews had to close off several lanes of Hampton Avenue to any vehicle traffic at all after a 36-inch water main broke right underneath that street. Hampton Avenue is one of the most heavily trafficked streets in all of St. Louis. In downtown Atlanta, again, this morning, 3 of the 4 lanes of Central Avenue had to be shut down after a giant water main broke there as well. Now, this was a scene yesterday afternoon in Pearl City, Hawaii, right outside of Honolulu.
They've seen water main breaks along Como Mine Drive before, but this one made an even bigger splash Monday afternoon.
I heard a noise, started hearing rocks flying at a glass, some kind of glass noise, and I heard water just whipping out from the ground. It looks like Old Faithful.
It was just waterfall like gushing through, and towels wouldn't do anything by then.
They're going to get flooded down there, though, huh?
It was a straight, like a river down to the porch, and it was just going down, collecting with all the other water that was shooting out this way. I was calling my mom, crying, and all you can hear was the roar of the water flying past me.
Every day across the United States, an estimated 700 water mains break. 700. These water main breaks cause traffic delays. They cause damage to lives and property. They cause disruptions in the drinking water supply, which they carry to our homes. Maybe you'd say it's supposed to be like this. Maybe this is a cost of having water. No. Every few years, the American Society of Civil Engineers issues a national report card on America's infrastructure. You've probably heard the latest report gave us the grade of D. Sad. But when it comes to our water infrastructure, things like water remains, it was even worse than that. We got a grade of D-. And part of the reason for that is because our water mains in this country are really, really old. Right now, the city of Evanston, Illinois is in emergency repair mode after 8 separate breaks occurred along one water main in the span of 48 hours. Quote, it's being caused by the age of the system and the ground the water main is buried in, said Utilities Director David Stoneback, adding the pipe's contact with the ground for more than 86 years has been a factor in the problem. Think? In all, 30% of the pipes that are now serving major population centers are between 40 and 80 years old. We are now in crisis mode when it comes to the water infrastructure in this country. And the cost to fix it, about $335 billion over the next 20 years. It's a lot of money. That's the bad news. The good news? There has never been a better time to fix it than right now. Things like aging and broken water mains, that is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about infrastructure. And infrastructure just happens to be the best deal in the economy right now. Here are the reasons. We have construction workers who aren't being productively employed. The unemployment rate in that sector is about 14%. It's a depression. The global slowdown has meant a slowdown in construction costs because raw materials are cheap, because countries like China and India aren't using as many of them, much less Europe. We have factories that are lying dormant that could be making those materials and employing people to produce those materials that aren't currently being productively used for other things. And we have money that is on the table to borrow for essentially less than nothing. Let's be clear. Putting this stuff off is not fiscally responsible. $1 of delayed infrastructure maintenance is like $1 of borrowing. It's $1 we have to pay later. But when you delay the infrastructure maintenance, that $1 today can become $50 tomorrow, as a bridge you were going to fix is now collapsed. So we need to do it. It's cheap to do it, and it gives people jobs. It is an unbelievable deal. In any world, we should be doing it. And yet we're not. There are some things in American politics and policy that we should be having real arguments about. When Mitt Romney says, for instance, we don't need more public sector workers, he thinks we as a country have too many firemen. It's an argument we should have. It's a fair argument. It's an argument about the size of the public sector. But if he thinks we shouldn't be spending as much money on teachers, fine, that's also an argument we should have. But nobody thinks we don't need to fix water mains. I mean, literally nobody thinks it. Not Mitt Romney, not Barack Obama, not even arch-conservative members of the U.S. Senate like James Inhofe, who thinks that we should be spending more on infrastructure than we currently are. Earlier this year, Congress extended the payroll tax cut. Reasonable people can disagree about whether we needed more payroll tax cuts. Giving people more money that isn't in their paychecks isn't necessarily buying anything for us as a country. It's supporting the economy, but it's a temporary boost. We don't get anything tangible and permanent out of it in the long run. It's the sort of thing the Republican Congressman Paul Ryan calls sugar high economics, in fact. Again, a temporary boost, not much else. I don't really agree, but reasonable people can have that discussion. We can have a discussion as to whether it's sugar high economics. But you can't say that doing things like fixing water mains is sugar high economics. You get something tangible in the end. You get a new water main. Not all infrastructure is what you can see with your eyes, roads and bridges. Sometimes it's the stuff that's under your feet. It's bringing water to your family. Even if tomorrow the economy recovered completely, we still as a country need to fix our water mains. It's one of those things we need to do no matter what. And now is not only as good a time as any to do it, it's a better time than almost any to do it. But instead, we have traffic jams that pile up for hours and hours and hours in city after city while we sit and do nothing. If this is a time to do it, the question is, why aren't we? Joining us now is independent Senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders is on the Senate Committee for Environment and Public Works and the Budget Committee. Senator Sanders, thank you for being with us tonight.
Great to be with you.
So, why aren't we?
Well, the answer is pretty simple. Everything you said is true. Everybody knows you have to invest in infrastructure. We can create millions of decent-paying jobs. In the long term, and I speak as a former mayor, you obviously save money because you don't have to do constant repairs, as we've just seen. The simple reason is, I'm afraid, that you have a Republican mindset that says, let's see, we can repair the infrastructure, save money long time, create millions of jobs. Bad idea. Barack Obama will look good. And we have got to do everything that we can to make Barack Obama look bad. So, despite the fact that we had a modest bipartisan transportation bill, roads, bridges, public transit, passed the Senate with over 70 votes, Inhofe, the most conservative guy in the Senate, working with Barbara Boxer, one of the most progressive, we can't get that bill moving in the House of Representatives. So if you're asking me why, I would say 100% political. If it's good for America, if it creates jobs, if it's good for Barack Obama, we can't do it.
Now, some Republicans say, and some people say, didn't we do infrastructure a couple years ago? You heard a lot in the stimulus that we had done infrastructure. So how come we have all of this outstanding infrastructure?
Because we have ignored infrastructural needs for a very, very long time. Yeah, we did put money in infrastructure. We put it into the state of Vermont, put more money into roads and bridges, but we need a lot more, and that's true for the other 49 states as well. We have, and it's not only roads, it's not only bridges, it's not only water systems, it's mass transportation. It is rail. China is building high-speed rail all over the place. We are not. Our rail system is in many ways deteriorating. We have schools that are aging. We have culverts that need work. We have tunnels that need work. We have an enormous amount of work that is ready to go right now, and it is beyond comprehension that our Republican friends will not support infrastructure legislation.
Now, one of the things that I think people sometimes miss in the infrastructure conversation is that for the last couple of years, we used to do infrastructure bills for many years at a time, 5 years, 6 years, something like that. For the last couple of years, we have passed 9 short-term bills in Congress. Instead of one, the Inhofe-Boxer bill is only 2 years, but that's longer than a couple of months. And that's meant, as I understand it, states and localities can't plan future and bigger infrastructure projects because they don't know what the federal government will or won't be doing in a couple months, making essentially every dollar we're spending in infrastructure now less effective because people can't plan for the future around it.
That's absolutely. And I'll tell you something. Every day that we delay right now getting this modest transportation bill done is a serious problem because we're in the state of Vermont, you don't do roads in January and February. We do them in the summertime. And the construction companies need to know that they're ready to go, and they need to know it now.
One of the things that we used to do in infrastructure, and that I know is holding up the surface transportation bill in some ways, is we had a gas tax for it. It was a tax on gasoline. Ronald Reagan raised it by a nickel when he invested in infrastructure. And one thing that's been remarkable to me in this conversation the last couple of years, just showing how far both parties have moved right on the tax issue, is that even Democrats refuse to broach the idea of a gas tax. And with that not even on the table anymore, I do wonder where we're going to be funding it in a sustained way going forward.
Well, that's a good question. I'm not a great fan of the gas tax because I come from a rural state. You got a lot of people traveling long distances to work, and they're making $10 an hour. But we're living in a country right now with the most unequal distribution of income and wealth. The wealthiest people are paying the lowest effective tax rates in decades. There are ways to raise money to create jobs and rebuilding our infrastructure without doing it in a regressive way, in my view.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much for being around tonight.
My pleasure.